It's my final day in Seattle, and I just wanted to give some thoughts before I get on the plane. Pete Carroll's comments after the 49ers game to the press were very interesting. He admitted that they're not utilizing all their weapons properly, stating the obvious there. But the way that he talked about it was interesting. To publicly come out and sort of concede that they've not done a good enough job getting all these players involved. And then he actually went through the list of players they could be getting more out of. I mean, when you're name checking, we could get more out of Noah Fant. There's a serious problem there. The thing is that, Pete Carroll's the head coach. And to me, it felt a little bit like he was, putting the blame on Shane Waldron, and probably rightly so. For me, whatever happens over the next few weeks, Shane Waldron should not be the offensive coordinator of the Seattle Seahawks anymore. He's just not done a good enough job. And this has been a horrendous disappointment in terms of the offense because they just have so many weapons and they are impotent. So Waldron needs to go. But ultimately, the buck stops with the head coach. The head coach cannot come out after 11 games and say, yeah, we're not doing enough to feature our offensive weapons. We're not doing a good enough job on third down. We're not doing a good enough job on the red zone. You're 11 games into a season now. It's your job to come up with solutions. It's your jobs to improve the situation. And week after week after week, we're talking about the same things, and it isn't good enough. Now, what I think was going to happen here, I think it's pretty obvious, the way that this is trending, that Shane Waldron is not going to be the offensive coordinator next year, that they are going to make a change there. Now, I think that's what they're going to do. I think the way they're going to play this is they're going to take this one on the chin as an extreme disappointment this year. They're going to almost just put all of the blame on Waldron, fire him, bring in another offensive coordinator, draft a quarterback, probably with the first pick, maybe after a trade up, and I'm going to write about that this week, and crack on and sort of feel that will be enough. Give somebody else an opportunity to work with this group, insert a young quarterback to maybe buy a bit of time and faith, and just to see if that creates a bit of a spark. I genuinely think they may well do that now. And as we've seen with CJ Stroud this year, if you put the right quarterback with the right offensive coordinator, put the right scheme in, it doesn't have to be an absolute struggle for a young quarterback in the NFL. Not everybody's as talented as CJ Stroud, but the Houston Texans have shown that you can have a pathway to success with a first-year quarterback. So I think that's what they're going to do. But I just get the sense that for a lot of people, that isn't going to satisfy them in a way it may well have done after 5 years. With Pete Carroll, we have now had 2 resets. When the LOB, they moved on from the LOB era, they reset in 2018, and that period for a few years was just carried by Russell Wilson. The Seahawks were not a good football team. They struggled with the pass rush. They traded Frank Clark away, never replaced him. They didn't retain Jadeveon Clowney. They went into seasons expecting Benson Mayowa and Bruce Irvin to be a good enough pass rush. The running game was awful at times. Russell Wilson's peak years validated that period to the point that, Carroll and Schneider have been very good at coming out in the media in the last 12 months saying consistent contenders and consistently in the playoffs and consistently winning 10 games and stuff like that. But Russell Wilson made sure that was possible during that era. And that's the reason why. And then when Russell Wilson's gone, it's another reset. Now, without Russell Wilson, without Pete Russell Wilson producing moments of magic and leading the offense, this team is currently 15-14. And, assuming that they lose to Dallas and San Francisco in the next 2 games, and maybe the Eagles, they're going to have a losing record. Last year, people were willing to give them the benefit of the doubt because it was they traded Russell Wilson. Nobody expects Geno Smith to be as good as he is. Young team, picks coming up in the next draft, top 5 pick because Denver have been awful, stuff like that. There was a lot of excitement. There was a lot of people going, okay, it doesn't matter that they finished 9-8 after starting 6-3. It doesn't matter that they basically got trounced in the wild card game eventually by the Niners. People were willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. But now, there's no top 5 pick coming. They've had 2 loaded draft classes. People can see the talent, people can see the weapons and offense, and people expect a bit more. So I'm not sure that people are just going to go, yeah, this is fine. Just have another go. Just appoint another offensive coordinator. You've had Darrell Bevel, you've had Jeremy Bates, you've had Brian Schottenheimer. You've now had Shane Waldron. Just go and get the next guy. The next one will work. I don't think people are in the mood for that. I think people are starting to actually turn a little bit. There was a comment from Troy on the blog in my piece that I wrote on Saturday saying, and I think this kind of sums up where a lot of people are at. Not everybody, but a lot of people. He says, I see the graphic frequently about what the Seahawks gained and gave up in the Russell Wilson trade. A year ago at this time, I was excited and energized about this team and the future. Fast forward 1 year, and this is the lowest I've been on this franchise in a long time. Changes are badly needed. That's where I think a lot of fans are at. I think a lot of people, like Troy, were very excited last year. Hey, look, I can see green shoots. I can see, a pathway to getting better. And they've got another draft class and they can draft a whole bunch of young players and they can get this thing moving. And I think a lot of people were comfortable with that and were comfortable letting them go through that process. And now a year on, they are far worse than they were last year. Yes, they've won 6 games, but I mean, look who they've beaten. They had the third easiest schedule going up until the Ravens game, which enabled them to get 5 of their 6 wins. They were very lucky in that first half of the season to have the schedule that they did. And since then, with the way that they've played against the Ravens and the Niners in particular, I would suggest also the way they played the Commanders, were not a good football team, by the way. Just squeezed past that game. They've shown that they're not good and that they've regressed rather than improved and taken a big step forward this year. So whereas like last year there was a lot of optimism and big off season coming up, I think people can see now they're not playing well enough. There's not loads of draft picks coming up. They've actually traded away the second round pick next year. And for those people who are minded to think deeply about this, and I know a lot of fans don't dig into this kind of thing that much. Not everybody's addicted to spot track and over the cap and stuff like that, but they've only got $6 million to spend next year. So they're going to have to essentially have a bit of a mini reset, whatever happens in the offseason. They're going to have to move some players around, move some contracts around, just to be able to keep the free agents, let alone improve the team with anybody else coming in. And they're going to have to replace some players. So I think that and look, there's also little things. It's little things like Bobby Wagner come back as a feel-good story and everyone's happy. And then when you watch the Rams and the Niners expose him in coverage and in space the way that they did in the last 2 games, it just makes you think, well, yeah, but you need to be better than that. We can't just have a run defending middle linebacker. It needs to be somebody who, you don't have to be necessarily a top 5 linebacker, but you need somebody who can at least handle the scheme that you're going to play 4 times. The schemes you're going to play 4 times when you play the Niners and you play the Rams with McVay and Shanahan. So I think people are thinking, just changing the offensive coordinator and drafting a quarterback is not going to get it done. That's what I think they're going to do. That's what I think is going to happen in the offseason. But I think people, they kind of want to go a bit further because I look at this and Pete Carroll's been here for 14 seasons now, 13 years in total, it'll be 14 next year. And it's a long time. And everybody loves Pete Carroll. Nobody has any ill will towards Pete Carroll. Everybody appreciates what he's done. It's been a great ride, but it does genuinely feel like we're coming to the end. Now, I said in a video a couple of weeks ago that I think Pete Carroll can still win a Super Bowl in Seattle, and I still believe that. But I think in order to do that, he has to completely just take a step back schematically and be completely hands-off and hand the reins over to a star-studded defensive court and a star-studded defensive coordinator. And I don't think he's prepared to do that. Just listen to what he said after the Niners game. He said our aim was to beat them deep, to take some deep shots. And that, as a statement, was not a bad thing to say. He felt that they'd given up a lot of penalties, the Niners throwing deep. It's a good tactic to have, to go and target the Niners. But here's the problem. That was Seattle's tactic. Seattle came into the game thinking, we'll throw it deep. Now, the Niners come into that thinking, okay, well, we can exploit Bobby Wagner with crossing patterns. We can run the ball this way. We're going to have some misdirection, which will catch them off guard when we've done this, and this play. That will set us up for this play, which will work in there. Everything's sort of connected. They can beat you in multiple different ways. There's a bit more of a plan. Whereas the Seahawks plan seemed to be throw deep, and that's not good enough. And I'm sort of torn a little bit because on the one hand, I do think Carroll has given Waldron a lot of rope and has said, you lead the offense. Because I could never imagine that a Pete Carroll-led team that is heavily influenced in the play calling would run as little as they have done. So I do think that Waldron has a lot of control. But when Carroll's saying stuff like, we want to beat him, I think that's a Carroll thing. This is how we're going to beat them. We're going to beat them deep. And sort of my feeling now is I want someone running this offense and or leading this team who can think, in multiple ways like Shanahan and McVay do, to beat opponents and to find ways to exploit their weaknesses and keep them guessing, and not just have throw it deep, but have many different ways to beat you. I mean, look at it was sort of when I was at Husky Stadium yesterday, and it's 4th and 1, and they have that misdirection end around to Roma Dunze to get a big conversion, a huge play that won the game essentially. Could you ever imagine the Seahawks trying anything like that? There's none of that. There's no misdirection. It really is basic. Like the people are highlighting it on Twitter all the time now. You need 3 yards, and all the routes are running downfield. There's nothing over the middle. There's no sort of, okay, even if you intend to throw it deep, that's not open. I'll check it down underneath to a couple of crossing routes. Why can't you use Jackson Smith-Njigba and Tyler Lockett or your tight ends to do that? So I look at this team now and I'm thinking, I've got the list here. Walker, Charbonnet, DK, Lockett, Jackson Smith-Njigba, Bobo, Fant, Disley, Parkinson, a top 10 left tackle. I'd even say, look, experienced veteran quarterback. Geno Smith hasn't played very well this year, but still experienced. He's not, it could be worse. He's not Tommy DeVito. So with all of that, you have to be better. You have to have better ideas, better imagination. You have to execute better. So I think it is time to see somebody leading this offense and thinking differently and sort of being able to go toe-to-toe with a Shanahan and a McVay. And I just think it's Seattle's time to do that. It became time to move on from Mike Holmgren. And that was painful. And a lot of people didn't want to do it because people were saying, this is the guy that's led Seattle to a Super Bowl. He deserves to stay as long as he wants. And we had all those arguments. And it's sentimental. And a lot of fans are either too young or adopted the team in 2012. They don't know what life's like without Carroll. But unless he is just willing to be Nick Saban and take a complete step back, hand the keys to, I'm not just saying like hand the keys to Clint Hurt. I'm talking about getting rid of Clint Hurt and Shane Waldron and going out and getting ex-head coaches to run his offense and defense. People with proven track records as coordinators maybe, and just letting them go to town and you be the motivator, you be the figurehead. But he doesn't work that way. He wants his guys. He wants to have control. He doesn't really do that, does he? He doesn't bring in big name, hot shot ex-coach. Like a Vic Fangio would never come and work for Pete Carroll in Seattle. He likes his guys. And, quite frankly, if Waldron does go, part of me wonders whether Nate Carroll would take over the offense or, they just bring back Dave Canales if Todd Bowles is sacked in Tampa Bay and he leaves as well. I don't know if Tampa Bay would let him leave, quite frankly, because he seems to have done a good job with Baker Mayfield. But even still, is it just going to be somebody from within who gets it or somebody who will become one of the guys who's within? That's the problem. And, I'm ready to see the Seahawks be more than this. 1 playoff win in 6 years, probably going to be 1 playoff win in 7 years in a few weeks' time. Very average team, like I say, 15-14 since the Wilson trade. This is what they are, an average football team who can beat the bad teams, but then get outclassed by the good teams. And I think the roster is too expensive and too talented for this level of performance that we're seeing. And it's not just the results, it's the level of performance. They have maxed out. They have had 2 loaded drafts. Where they've acquired a lot of talent. They've used their 2nd round pick next year. They have spent a fortune. You look at the defense, the defense performance. They've got 3 2nd round pass rushers. They've got Leonard Williams, who cost a 2nd round pick. Jaron Reed, a big, a modest, moderately expensive free agent addition. But then Draymond Jones, huge, big splash in free agency. 1st round linebacker Jordan Brooks. Bobby Wagner comes back. 5th overall pick at cornerback. 2 safeties that are going to cost $50 million next year, one of which cost 2 first-round picks and a third to acquire via trade. You expect the defense to be brilliant with all of that investment, and they're not brilliant. They're not the biggest problem, but they're not brilliant, are they? And then on offense, you've got 2nd-round pick DK Metcalf on like a $24 million a year deal. You've got Tyler Lockett is on a huge deal. Very proven, experienced, talented player. Jackson Smith-Njigba, top 20 pick. Noah Fant, former top 20 pick. Now, Will Disley that you've paid, top 10 left tackle, 2 running backs who cost 2nd-round picks, quarterback that you've just paid a new contract to. You expect better than this. Again, it's not just about results, it's about performance, it's about the same mistakes happening week after week, and the coach just not having any answers to this. So you get to a point when you think, I'm not being funny. What reason is there to invest faith that they're going to turn this around next year? There isn't. So what are we doing? Are we just going to muddle along forever until ownership changes? Is that it? Is that what the offering is to the fan base here? Just accept it. Don't expect us to do anything because we might sell the team. I would say this. Jody Allen has come out and put statements out saying that she's in no rush to sell or anything like that, and people are very quick to back that up. And that might be a bargaining ploy. I don't know. But if that is true, that she's in no rush to sell, if you intend to be a proper custodian of this franchise, then you have to be prepared to make big decisions. Otherwise, get out and get out next year when you can sell the team in May, and let somebody else who's prepared to make some big decisions come in and make those big decisions. If you are just sitting there, just muddling along, not willing to change anything, not really, more interested in just keeping the people in place rather than actually striving to win championships, that's not how you run a franchise. That's not how I want the franchise to be run. It's not, and nobody should want the franchise to be run that way. This isn't this just isn't some club that we're all part of for the fields. This is a football team. This is an NFL football team, and the expectation should be to compete, to do what you need to do to go for championships. And right now, it's hard to see where this team is heading towards competing for championships. So, if she's not willing to make big decisions, then move along and let somebody else do it. But my advice, such as it is, would be prepared to make big decisions. You either need to be telling Pete Carroll it's time to just be the motivator and the head guy, and let coordinators who are tactically superior run your offense and your defense, or you need to put somebody in place, and this would be my preference, to put somebody in place who can be the head coach, defensive minded head coach. You draft a quarterback, you pair them together, and that's the next era of Seahawks football. Nothing lasts forever. Pete Carroll is going to leave this team one day. Why not now? Why does it have to be 2-3 years down the line? Why do we have to waste another 2-3 years of our lives if they're not going to get into contention? This Seahawks team playing this way, with this little imagination and offense, with this little ability to adjust, with this little ability to get anywhere close to teams like the Niners and the Ravens, it isn't going to compete. It's not even going to win the NFC West. Shanahan and the Niners will win every time. They've won 4-5 in a row, isn't it, or something like that against Seattle? It'll be 5 anyway if it's not already in a couple of weeks. They're not getting close; they're getting further away. So it's time. I was watching a video with Stats on Fire, who was lapping it up on Twitter. He was like, "Get out of here, Seahawks! You're nowhere near. You're done. It's done. The magic is over." And the Niners are better than the Seahawks, and he's absolutely spot on. So what we're going to do about that? Just accept it and carry on the way we are, or we're going to do something about it? And I have to say, I'll read them out again: Walker, Charbonnet, DK, Lockett, JSN, Fant, Disley, Parkinson, top 10 left tackle. The possibility of drafting a quarterback next year. That is an assortment of talent that it'd be very interesting to see. A really good offensive mind come in and manage. And look, I mean, I wouldn't be against. There's a whole. I'm going to write an article about this. There are some names out there that could come in and do that. I think Eric Bieniemy's done a very good job with the Commanders. I think he's shown a lot of bottle, sort of leaving the cushiest job in NFL football and being Patrick Mahomes as offensive coordinator, Andy Reid's right-hand man. Probably will never get blamed for anything there, and when anything goes wrong, looks great now because Mahomes has had a bit of a down year after he's left. So it makes him look even better. He went to the Washington Commanders of all franchises and took on a second-year, fifth-round pick at quarterback, and has actually made him into a viable player. No one's blaming Eric Bieniemy. He speaks very well to the media. Is it his time to become a head coach somewhere? It sounds as if Washington's going to go all in with this new ownership to get a big flashy hire. Could someone like Eric Bieniemy come in and turn this offense around? Potentially so. Whether he comes in as offensive coordinator and assistant head coach, and you make that big splash and you get him in and you empower him, or whether you bring him in to replace Carroll, I think that would be quite intriguing. So that's just one suggestion. There's others that you could make as well. Obviously, the coach at Detroit is very highly rated too. But anyway, that's my thoughts on it. I don't really feel like there's any reason to be optimistic about this team, as Troy was saying in his comment. And and that's a bad place to be. And I get the sense that this is an increasing feeling amongst fans. There's not as many people defending Carroll now. There are, I think, even people grudgingly are going, "Yeah, do you know what? I think the world of Carroll, but where we're going here, and maybe it is time for a change." So there's my thoughts. Very quickly, I just wanted to say thank you to Curtis Allen, who I met for the first time this week, and we went to the Kraken game together. Had a great time. Big thank you to Curtis for that. Big thank you to Robbie Williams, who helped me with the tickets for the Seahawks game. Really appreciate that, Robbie, and everything that you do, and Curtis for the blog or for the channel. The Washington Huskies, want to say thank you to them as well. Was given a great personal tour of the facility, and loved every second of that. Loved being in the press box for the Apple Cup. Great occasion, enjoyable, competitive game. I was a bit worried that it was going to be a bit one-sided, so well done to Washington State for making it a game. Very strange ending to the game, and the Huskies kind of did everything they could to make that as hard as possible on their field goal kicker, but and Penix nearly threw a couple of interceptions at the end there, which would have been unbelievable. But they got the job done. My thoughts on Michael Penix are on the blog. I do think that he showed in that game that people are saying, is he injured and stuff like that? I can't make assessments based on hearsay or the potential of the player being injured. Based on what I've seen over the last few weeks, for me, he's more great arm, but I think trending more towards, very much a day 2 pick, possibly even round 3 than first round, like a lot of people are saying. But that, is offset a little bit by Jaden Daniels just going from strength to strength. And I saw quite a lot of the Texas A&M LSU game, and he looked fantastic in that. So I'm going to publish my horizontal board this week. So stay tuned for that on SeattleStrapblog.com. I think you'll find that very interesting. I've got an article coming possibly today, possibly tomorrow, with some thoughts sort of building on what I've talked a bit about in this video. Please subscribe to the channel. Check out SeattleStrapblog.com. We're getting towards that period now when it's going to be very busy, very alive on the blog. And make sure you like the video and leave a comment. Let me know what you think about the Seahawks and some of the things that I've talked about here. I will also say I just love the Pacific Northwest. Coming here, it's a privilege to come here. It's such an amazing part of the world. Lake Washington next to Husky Stadium, this setting. The weather's been amazing. It's been great just walking around Seattle in this beautiful weather. It's been very cold, but I kind of enjoy that. It's crisp. You can wrap up warm, go out for a long walk. I'm getting up at 6 o'clock every morning because of jet lag, and just walking out at 7 o'clock in the morning, going and getting a coffee. I've just loved every minute. Kind of sad that I'm going to have to get on the plane and head back home. But, just an amazing place. People very friendly. Love downtown Seattle. Love everything about the Pacific Northwest. And can't wait to come back here again really soon. Thanks for watching the video. I'll catch you next time.